Keith Benjamin has been the director of the City of Charleston's Office of Traffic and Transportation for almost a year now. I sit down one-on-one with Keith for a special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores, or listen to this interview later on the free iHeartRadio app. Keith Benjamin.
Hey.
It's so good to see you.
We back.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, man.
You are a busy guy, man.
I'm trying to work, man. Step by step, day by day. Step by step, day by day.
And we take you to the Savannah Now, which is the Savannah Morning News. Mm-hmm. And the headline reads this: City Talk, Charleston converts more streets to two-way traffic. Two-way traffic.
Yeah.
What is the future of that in your mind?
I think it's something to talk about when you look at particular urban planning design for roadways and how it dictated how people got from point A to point B, and especially when those pieces started. Unfortunately, some of those practices weren't just about how quickly somebody could get from point A to point B. Some of those decisions were inherently about keeping some people in and some people out. And one of the aspects of, from a design standpoint for two-way traffic is being able to add to our street grid, but it's also bringing back a certain feel to some of the streets that people know and love and remember when they were growing up. And of course, I'm gonna come here now. I've been here, so there's a difference there. But I think that there's some significance that brings, and we've seen the success of Spring and Cannon. We've actually gotten the green light to start looking at Line Street. Since we actually own the street, it's one of the pieces that I've been adamant about identifying those opportunities that we can do now. And because we own Line Street, there's an opportunity there to bring the rest of that into two-way. And so we'll be going out to community, getting their thoughts on the idea. We'll be doing some site visits to really kind of dictate what that looks like and actually have that something that's internal. So we're excited about just the start of that and how that can grow into some of the other conversations that have been had of other streets that could possibly be two-way.
And you talk about conversations, you talk about right now. Right now, you're talking about the new downtown bike plan.
Yeah.
Where are we with this?
Well, before I came on board, the council, in their wisdom, decided to go into a memorandum of understanding with the Council of Governments, Berkeley, Charleston, Dorchester Council of Governments. And every 4 or 5 years, a metropolitan planning organization like our Tri-County COG has to do what's called a long-range plan. And I know plan is such a weird term today because it doesn't necessarily mean implementation. But this process does. Essentially, every 4 or 5 years, they make a determination of their priority projects, transportation projects throughout the region. And what council decided to do was to link into that process to identify 13 projects that the city of Charleston would say would be a priority. And that's why we had the humongous charrette back in October and otherwise to do for a citywide transportation plan in a very long time. A part of that was really kind of culminating the work that's been happening from a planning standpoint over the years, and that includes what has been dubbed the People Pedal Plan.
Right.
For some time, it's really been worked on to really kind of give better designation of where bikes should be within the public right-of-way and giving those who use that mode of transportation safer access. And that's really important for us to do. I believe that it's my job to make sure that no matter what mode of transportation somebody chooses or might not have a choice, right? Like some people might not have that choice. Walking and biking might be their only option, that they're as safe as possible. And the truth of the matter is, both in Charleston City and Charleston County, we have the highest rates of death and injuries for pedestrians and cyclists in the state. And that's unacceptable. I can't accept that as the case. And so a part of that really is what is the designation of the right-of-way that accommodates for those modes as well as others in a safe way. And the bike infrastructure is a part of that opportunity, not just for some, not just for tourists, but for those who both depend on the mode all the time. Those are not. When we saw the numbers over the last 2 years in terms of death and injuries, 43% of them were African American. Right? And so this conversation about accessibility isn't just in one niche space. It's about making sure access is for everybody.
And you talk about the numbers. Let me talk to you about the new traffic study.
Yeah.
Obviously, you guys implemented the new traffic, parking meter system. Mm-hmm. How's that study going right now?
Well, we'll be before City Council with the citywide transportation plan on July, so that it can be looped into the comprehensive. The separate piece you're talking about is the parking study. We have not studied our parking comprehensively since 1998. And so part of my responsibility, along with a number of other divisions and departments in the city, is to bring that to fruition. And so one thing I've been very adamant about is that community will have a say-so in how the city should be moving that forward. And though we're in the beginning of the summer months, we wanted to hear back from folk, and that's why we released that survey. And we've gotten, last I checked, 3,054 responses in just about 2 weeks from folks. So folk are obviously interested in parking, but we think that's important to really get the say-so of community as them having a strong voice in the decision-making process. And so following that, there's going to be some stakeholder interviews that are going to be going on. There's going to be some major open public sessions later on post the summer months when students come back and people come back from vacation, so we can make sure we're getting a really clear say-so. So we're excited about both the combination of the quantitative, like the real life data of what we're dealing with, and then also the qualitative, what people are experiencing on a daily basis, being married together to help make that difference. So 10-month process, so by the end of the year, top of 2019, we should be through the entirety of the comprehensive study.
How should the city move forward with parking meetings and really traffic?
Well, one, I believe, is that we have to be okay with stopping siloing the conversations around flooding, around affordable housing, around parking, around transportation unto themselves, right? The everyday person deals with these issues at the same time. And so our solutions have to deal with those intersections too, right? Part of dealing with parking is creating levels of turnover that prevent the level of congestion that we have. Part of transportation is the mobility modes that people choose that cause us not to be in 84 to 96% just individuals in the car, but also other ways in which people can get around. Part of the conversation of access is flooding, right? Because if we get a high tide, a sunny day tide, that changes the routes of how people get from point A to point B. And so people are dealing with these issues all at the same time. And so for us to think about solutions in siloed fashion doesn't get us to where we need to get to. And so what I've tried to do, my due diligence through my department and partnering with other departments and other people outside of city government, is really how do we deal with these issues at the intersections, right? As we're talking about transportation and access, specifically in areas that need it the most, how is affordable housing a part of that conversation, right? As we're talking about flooding and resiliency, what does that mean for roadway design? As we're talking about parking and what does that look like, what does it mean for somebody, the fact that only 19%, according to College of Charleston study, of those who are in the food, beverage, and hospitality business actually live on the peninsula, right? So there's some other way that they're getting to work every day. Is that efficient? Is that safe? How long does that take? How can that change, right? There's connections between these, and that has to be recognized as we're trying to make solutions.
Describe to me the following one word: holy spokes.
Oh man, excitement, excitement, and I'll say excitement about a specific aspect that might be different than what's been out in the news. Yes, the numbers of almost 14,000 members and 50,000 miles traveled and 4 million calories burned and $62,000 saved for those who chose biking instead of walking. So excited about those, but what I'm mostly excited about is that as the CEO Sean Flood said to me when we first sat down, he said, Keith, I believe that this is a transportation system. And I said, well, I agree, but the definition of a system is connections that create a whole. And if there's pieces that are outside of that connection, then we don't really have a whole. And the truth is that there were some pieces that were missing, especially for those who, for low, moderate income folk. And people who might be dependent on the mode of transportation but might not be able to afford the price points that existed. And through the help of the Better Bike Share Partnership, which is a national organization focused on equity with bike share companies, and us winning that grant and in partnership with the city, Charleston Moves, Holy Spokes, and then also Enough Pie, we actually have this new program called Just Ride, where those who are at 60% of the median income or lower will be able to pay $5 and be able to ride Holy Spokes bikes up to 2 hours a day for free. If they're unbanked and don't have a credit or a debit card, there's a special card that they can get from Holy Spokes where they can go to the Food Lion on King Street and a bunch of other locations and be able to put money onto that card. Right. So that allows them to have that. And then it's also the hiring of ambassadors, paid people from those communities who are able to engage in education and encouragement for those who might be interested in the system, but also just want to understand, is this for me? and how do I access it, and what does it mean for my daily commute, or being able to get to a health facility, or being able to get to school. And so I think changing the narrative is a piece of that, and I've been excited about both Gotcha Group, who is the company that's over Holy Spokes, and all the other community partners that have been a part of it. So that's the piece that really excites me.
The West Ashley Bikeway.
Yes, Bikeway and Greenway, yes.
Exactly right. Well, how would you describe that in one word?
Well, opportunity. And I'll say it this way, we had just a couple weeks ago through our Parks Department, and
right.
shout out to Jason Kronsberg, who's head of Parks, and Harry Lassane from Charleston Parks Conservancy, that really busted their tails with the consultants to put something together.
Sure.
Was happy to be a partner and working alongside them. And I'm excited about it because we have some clear opportunities that have come from community of work that needs to be done. And one of the things that was important was the collaborative efforts with county, with SCDOT, for them to see the work that was happening during that charrette process, so they can understand why WAPU and 17 connection is important, why the 61 bikeway crossing after Sycamore near Maryville and Ashleyville is important, why the Albemarle Road connection is important. And then from my end, as we're going back for the federal grant to finally connect West Ashley to the peninsula with a dedicated bike and pedestrian bridge, to be able to show the concepts and the work that's come out of community as a part of that grant process, we're excited about doing that too.
And let me get you over to Mount Pleasant and the Wando Bridge.
Yeah.
When that was, actually the westbound side reopened, what was going to your mind?
Well, a couple of things. One, our Chief Reynolds, our new police chief, who's amazing, he called me and he said, Keith, we got this issue going on. Let's use this as an excuse to create a collaborative atmosphere. And so we acted as if it was as big of an emergency as it could possibly be, and found every avenue to collaborate. He had staff in my office, I had staff in his office. We were having daily calls and communications about it. We were working alongside Brad Morrison, who's the transportation director in Mount Pleasant, and their chief of police. We were in communication as much as possible. I can't say enough for the work that the municipalities did to collaborate and purposely collaborate and find ways to make solutions, and even communicate back with community members who wanted to know what was going on and how they can spread the word. And I also have to give a shout out to the Secretary Hall. I think her leadership throughout the process, at a drop of the hat, she was making phone calls, she was giving whatever information was necessary there. So that was important. I think the other piece that was clear was the realization that came over folk of, there might be another way I can get to work today. There might be a different mode of transportation I could choose today. I myself, I took a ferry and took bike share to be able to get to work in a different way. So I think, it kind of widened people's eyes. Our Low Country Go app that kind of gives you a sense of van pools and car pools, right, and transit opportunities that you can be taking advantage of. And so I hope that begins a conversation for folk, right, about what opportunities there are for them to think differently, not just about their commute, but their daily travels for their needs.
And when I interviewed you right before the hurricane last
man, there's all these emergencies. You was like, come on, man.
Are you sure this is what you're going to be doing?
Yeah, man.
Well, what is it like for you to be here, Director Traffic Transportation for the City of Charleston?
Well, it's a blessing, man,
yeah.
and it's just been a lot of prayer and just taking it one step at a time, day by day. My wife and I came down here, new city, new job, with a 3-week-old.
Wow.
And now he is almost 14 months, right, and we're still here. So I'm grateful to the mayor, I'm grateful to city council, I'm grateful for a lot of my staff who have just welcomed me with open arms and allowed me to be Keith. And I think that's a big part of it, right? I think I bring a different flair, a different notion to the position, and just wanted to bring as much energy as possible, as many new ideas as possible. I remember when the mayor first had a conversation with me, his one request was that I would look under the hood, see where the issues are, and be unapologetic in pointing them out and identifying what solutions might be there. And I hope that I've begun to meet that expectation that was asked of me. And I'm looking forward to the work ahead. I think my focus is on implementation, even in the big and small ways, right? I think one of the things that's been clear to me is that people want to see progress. You know, people want to see progress. They want to see a response. They want to see that they're heard, right? And I said to you in my first interview,
Right.
when I laid out my memo to my staff, I gave them 3 directions. One was that we were going to listen, right? We weren't going to be in the shadows as a department. We were going to be listening to what people have to say, because I think that's important to the conversation and the decision making. 2, we were going to connect, right? We weren't going to just be in our silo of transportation, but we were going to find those avenues that allow us to inject transportation as a piece of the solution to the complexities that relate to building community. And 3, that we were going to innovate, and not necessarily innovate in the sense of like what's the most cutting edge thing, which I think is important, but innovate in the sense of like we may have done this way before, but here's another way to think about it. Here's something we might not have done before, but there's an opportunity for us to take that risk and see how it works. And it's been awesome to see the progress that we have made, but there's so much more work, so much work to do.
Yeah, when you look under that hood, what else problems are you looking at right now?
I think one of the things that's been interesting on the left side of my desk is about 4 shelves of studies that go as far back as, I think the oldest one is about 1980 or 1979.
Wow.
And all sorts of studies, so all sorts of different things that we looked at in the city, sorts of plans, all sorts of different things. And to be honest, a lot of the ideas and thought processes that have come to me have not been, some new idea. Some of it has been, here's an opportunity to implement what citizens had asked for 10 years ago, 20 years ago, right? And I think there's some opportunities there, right? We did a traffic calming study in 2000 where citizens can make requests of different ways they wanted their roadway to look so that it was safer for them in their residential area. I think we need to look back at that report and see what are some best practices out of that, right? The Calhoun study of 2009 is a great example. There's some great things in our roadway master plan from the 80s. Some of the ideas around how transportation should look and why it should look in a certain way, those themes and mantras are not new to the Charleston citizenry. I think the biggest thing that I've heard over and over again is, when is the implementation going to come? And so that's where my eye has been on. What ways from my department or in partnership with others can I be zeroed in on implementation?
Wow, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Well, Keith Benjamin, thank you so much for your time. I really
Thanks for having
appreciate
me,
this.
man. Thanks for having me.
Oh, anytime.
Appreciate it.
Likewise.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.